My fiancée hid my passport to sabotage my work trip. When I confronted her, she ripped it in half. But I got an emergency one. She went viral on TikTok lying about me, and then I sued her. The judge destroyed her, and she lost everything. I'm 29 years old. I work in administration for a tech company, and what happened a few months ago with my ex-fiancée still has me processing everything. Basically because I never thought someone I loved could try to sabotage my career like that. Melissa and I had been together for like 3.5 years. We got engaged a year and a half ago, and honestly, I thought she was the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. You know, the typical love story everyone wants to have. She's a graphic designer. She's 28. And when we met, she seemed super independent and ambitious, which I loved because I'm also pretty dedicated to my work, and I always thought I needed a partner who understood that. At first, everything was perfect, or at least that's how it seemed to me. The thing is that over time, I started noticing certain signs, but I guess I ignored them because I was in love and wanted it to work. Melissa needed a lot of attention, like a lot, and if I had a heavy week at work and couldn't see her as much as she wanted, she'd get all dramatic and make me feel guilty with comments like, "Oh, I see your work is more important than me," or things like that. I always tried to make up for it on weekends, planned special dates, bought her little gifts, basically did everything I could to show her I cared, but it never seemed to be enough, you know what I mean? Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there, but in the moment you don't want to admit that the person you love can be manipulative. Everything exploded when my boss called me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. I think it was February or early March, and told me they had selected a small group of employees to represent the company in a series of super important international meetings. Basically, it was an incredible opportunity. Trips to Europe and Asia over the next 6 months, meetings with key clients, the possibility of growing within the company in ways I had never imagined. My boss explained that they had selected me because of my performance and dedication, and that these kinds of opportunities don't come around often. I was euphoric, literally felt like I was floating when I left that office. The first thing I did was call Melissa to tell her the news because, I thought she was going to be as excited as I was. When I told her over the phone, her reaction was weird from the start. She paused for a long time, like 5 seconds that felt eternal, and then said, "Oh, that's good," with a tone that didn't sound excited at all. I asked her if something was wrong, and she said, "No, nothing. It's great. Congratulations." But I could feel something wasn't right. That night, when I got to our apartment, we'd been living together for like a year, she acted normal for a while, congratulated me, even made dinner, but there was something in the air that felt tense. After dinner, she said, "So, you're going to be traveling a lot, right?" And I explained that yes, the first trip was to London in 2 weeks, and I'd probably be gone for like 5 days. She just nodded and changed the subject, but I knew she didn't like it. The following days were weird. She started with passive-aggressive comments that at first were subtle but kept increasing. Things like, "Must be nice to be able to escape the country while some of us have to stay here working," or, "I guess now you're going to be too important to spend time with me." I tried to reassure her, told her this was temporary, that it was an opportunity for our future together, that the extra money would help us with the wedding and all that, but she kept the same attitude. A week before the trip, she started being more direct. She told me, "I don't understand why it has to be you. Surely there's someone else who can do it." And when I explained that no, they had specifically selected me, she got all dramatic, saying, "Well, then I guess your work is more important than our relationship." The night before my flight is when everything went to hell. I had my flight scheduled for 11 inches the morning the next day, so I was packing and checking that I had everything ready. Around 10 at night, I went to look for my passport, which I always kept in my nightstand drawer, in a specific envelope, along with other important documents. I opened the drawer, looked for the envelope, and it wasn't there. At first I thought maybe I had moved it without realizing it, so I started looking in other drawers, in my desk, in my work bag, basically everywhere. Melissa was in the living room watching TV, and when I asked her if she had seen my passport, she said no idea, without even turning to look at me. I started to panic because I needed that passport. My flight was in less than 13 hours, and without it, I couldn't travel. I searched everywhere, like literally turned the apartment upside down, checked absurd places where I knew it couldn't be, but checked them anyway because I was desperate. Melissa was still in the living room, acting all calm, and that started to seem suspicious to me. Like, your fiancé is panicking looking for a super important document and you don't even flinch, seriously? So I went to the living room and asked her directly, "Hey, are you sure you haven't seen my passport?" And she looked at me with this weird expression and said, "I already told you no." But there was something on her face. I don't know how to explain it. Like a kind of satisfaction or something. That's when it occurred to me to check her things. I didn't want to do it because it felt like an invasion of privacy, but the situation was desperate. I went to our room and started checking her drawers, her closet, and finally I grabbed her bag, that big bag she used to carry her laptop and her design stuff. I opened it, and there it was, in an interior pocket, my passport. I took it out and stood there holding the passport, feeling my blood boiling, because in that moment I knew she had hidden it on purpose. I went to the living room with the passport in my hand and said, "I found my passport. It was in your bag. Do you want to explain to me what it's doing there?" Melissa looked at me, and for a second I saw panic in her eyes, but then she changed her expression to one of defiance and said, "Okay, yes, I put it there, so what?" I was in shock, literally couldn't process what I was hearing. I asked her why the hell she would do something like that, and she exploded, started screaming, saying I was selfish, that I didn't care about her, that I was choosing my job over our relationship, that if I really loved her, I would cancel the trip and stay. I told her she was completely crazy, that it made no sense, that this was my job, my career, something I had worked years for. She said, "Well then choose, your job or me." I didn't even have to think about it much, because in that moment I saw everything clearly. This woman had just tried to sabotage my career, had hidden my passport to force me to miss an incredible opportunity, and now she was giving me an ultimatum as if she were the victim. I told her, "You know what, Melissa, this is over. I can't be with someone who tries to sabotage my life like this. It's done." She changed immediately, started crying, saying she didn't mean it, that she was scared of losing me, that we could talk about it, but I had already made my decision. I told her she needed to leave the apartment. The lease was in my name, and she could come get her things when I returned from the trip. That's when she did something I still can't believe. She snatched the passport out of my hands, and before I could react, she tore it in half. Just like that, ripped it down the middle in front of my eyes and said, "If I can't have you, your job isn't going to have you either." I was paralyzed, looking at my destroyed passport on the floor, and I felt a mixture of rage and panic because my flight was in hours, and now I didn't even have a valid passport. Melissa grabbed her keys and left the apartment, slamming the door, and I stayed there trying to process what had just happened. The first thing I did was call my best friend Austin, like at 11 at night already, and explained the whole situation to him. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Told me Melissa was completely unhinged and that he needed to help me. We researched online and found that I could apply for an emergency passport at a specific government office that opened at 8 inches the morning. The problem was, I needed to get there super early because they serve people in order of arrival and you had to wait in line. Austin told me he'd pick me up at 5 inches the morning to go together, and honestly, I don't know what I would have done without him in that moment. I didn't sleep at all that night. Basically stayed up organizing all the documents I needed for the emergency passport, printing my plane ticket, writing a statement of what had happened, all those things. Austin arrived at 5 on the dot. We went to the office, and there were already like 15 people in line when we got there, like at 5:30 inches the morning. Can you believe it? We waited there outside in the cold until they opened at 8, and when it was finally my turn to explain to the officer what had happened, he looked at me with a face of, "I can't believe someone would do something like this." I had to show them the torn passport, my plane ticket, a letter from my company explaining the urgency of the trip, basically everything. The process was eternal, or at least it felt that way because every minute that passed was one less minute to get to the airport. Finally, around 7:30 inches the morning, they gave me my emergency passport. Austin drove like crazy to the airport. We got there around 9:15, and I ran to the counter practically yelling that I needed to check in for my flight. I managed to get through security and get to the gate just as they were making the final boarding call. I got on the plane sweating, my heart beating 1,000 miles. An hour, but I had made it. I was on my way to London. During the flight, I tried to process everything that had happened. I couldn't believe Melissa had gone so far. Like, who does something like that? The trip to London was incredible. The meetings went perfectly. My bosses were super impressed with my work. And every time I thought about what Melissa had tried to do, it made me angrier because she almost made me lose this opportunity. While I was in London, Austin texted me saying Melissa had posted a video on TikTok telling her version of the story, but obviously all distorted to make herself look like the victim. When I got home after 5 days and saw the video, I couldn't believe it. Melissa was crying in front of the camera saying her fiancé had abandoned her for his job, that he had said horrible things to her, that he had kicked her out of his house for no reason, basically painting me as a heartless monster. The video had gone viral, had like 2 million views and thousands of comments from people telling her things like, "You deserve someone better," or "That man didn't value you." The worst part is that hate messages started coming to my Instagram and Facebook. People who didn't even know me sending me insults and threats because they had seen Melissa's video. My friends and family were furious about what she was doing, but I decided not to respond publicly because I didn't want to get into that game. Instead, I went to a lawyer and explained the whole situation to him. He told me what Melissa had done was destruction of federal property, because passports are government property, and that I could also sue her for interfering with my work obligations. We decided to take legal action, suing her for the costs of the emergency passport, the stress she caused me, and basically all the consequences of her actions. The legal process took like 2 months, and during that time, Melissa kept posting things on TikTok about how I was terrible and she was the victim. She had gotten like 50,000 followers thanks to the drama and even had small sponsorships with brands. But when we got to court, the truth came to light. My lawyer presented all the evidence, the torn passport, text messages where Melissa admitted what she had done, testimonies from Austin and other friends, everything. The judge looked at her and basically told her that her actions were indefensible and ordered her to pay me for the emergency passport expenses, legal fees, and additional compensation for all the trouble she caused me. After the court ruling came out, Melissa's narrative on social media started to fall apart. People who had investigated the case started commenting on her videos, the truth of what had happened, and her followers began to turn against her. The comments went from being supportive to things like, "So you stole his passport and lied about everything, or you're a manipulator." The brands that sponsored her cut their contracts with her. She lost thousands of followers in a matter of days, and her account that she had built around being the victim completely disintegrated. The last I heard about Melissa is that she had to move back in with her parents because she couldn't afford her apartment without the income from social media. I think she's in some town like 2 hours from here. She basically lost everything she had built with her lies, and honestly, even though part of me feels bad about how it all ended, another part thinks she brought the consequences on herself. You know what I mean? I continued with my work. The international trips continued for months and were incredible for my career. My boss told me he was considering me for an important promotion. Basically, everything worked out well for me, despite Melissa's attempts to sabotage it. About 3 weeks ago, something happened that I didn't expect at all. I had already moved to a new apartment because the old one had too many bad memories, and I was one night quietly watching a Playscape movie when someone knocked on my door. I opened it, and it was Melissa, standing there with the engagement ring in her hand, crying, telling me she had made a terrible mistake, that she missed me, that she had learned her lesson and wanted us to try again. I looked at her and felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not sadness, nothing. I told her, "Melissa, what you did was unforgivable. You tried to destroy my career because you were insecure and selfish, and then you lied publicly about me trying to ruin my reputation. There's no going back. I need you to leave and never come back." She tried to insist, started saying we could go to therapy, that she would change. All those things people say when they realize they screwed up, but I just closed the door. I heard her crying on the other side for a minute before leaving, and honestly, it was liberating to close that door literally and figuratively. Now, I'm focused on my career, hanging out with my friends, living my life without the constant drama that Melissa brought. I met someone new a few weeks ago. Nothing serious yet, but it's refreshing to be with someone who supports my goals instead of sabotaging them. I guess the lesson from all this is that when someone shows you who they really are, You have to believe them the first time. Melissa showed her true nature that night when she hid my passport, and everything that came after only confirmed that I had made the right decision to end that relationship. Not all endings are happy and perfect, but sometimes the best ending is simply walking away from someone who isn't good for you and moving forward with your life.